the NATO base in Mihail Kogălnicianu is supposed to become the largest NATO base in Europe, larger than the Ramstein base.
Balkans Calling. Voices from the region.
Welcome everybody. My name is Luminița Gatejel and I'm a researcher at the Leibniz Institute for East and Southeast European Studies, IOS, in Regensburg. I am sitting here with Constantin Ardeleanu, who at the moment is a visiting fellow at the Science Campus Europe and America in the Modern World, which is a collaboration between the IOS and the University of Regensburg. Let me first introduce Constantin and say a few words about his research interests. He is a senior researcher at the Institute for Southeast European History and a long-term fellow at the New Europe College in Bucharest, specializing in the social and economic history of the Danube and the Black Sea region since the 18th century. From his extensive list of publications, I will only mention two recent monographs. The European Commission of the Danube, 1856-1948, published with Brill in 2020, and Steamboat Modernity, Travel, Transport and Social Transformation of the Lower Danube, forthcoming at Central European University Press. In the last 3 years, Constantin was also a PI in the international research project Contested Waterway, Governance and Ecology on the Lower Danube, 1800 to 2018, funded by the Leibniz Association, and in this project we worked closely together. Constantin, welcome to the podcast. As a way of introduction, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit about your current and past research and how it links to the Lower Danube.
Thanks for the invitation, dear Luminița. It's great to be back in Regensburg. I always come with much pleasure to the Institute in Regensburg and to the University of Regensburg. There's a long cooperation between myself, my institutions back in Bucharest and the University and the Institute in Regensburg. My research interests are related, as you are saying, the Lower Danube and the Black Sea in the past 2 centuries, since the opening of the Black Sea to international trade and shipping in late 18th century and up to the present developments in connection to Russia's full-fledged war against Ukraine. As you are saying, I'm mostly an economic and social historian, and I would divide my research interest into 3 main topics. One is related to the port cities of the Lower Danube and the Black Sea, and mainly with the economic activities of Romania's largest port cities, Galați, Brăila, Constanța, Sulina. I've been interested in merchants, export trade, communal life, things related to the communities of merchants that were involved in trade and shipping at the Lower Danube. The second main topic of research is the history of transport. And I've been working a lot on infrastructure, from bridges, harbors, dockyards, all the way to railways and modern infrastructure, let's call it. But I've also been interested in institutions related to transportation, from shipping companies, the Romanian Maritime Service, Donau Dampfschifffahrtsgesellschaft, Austrian Lloyd, and also institutions involved in the regulation of shipping, such as the European Commission of the Danube. You mentioned the monograph I published some years ago. And the third topic that I've been interested in is the environmental history of the Lower Danube, such as the results of technology on the natural environment. I've worked on fishing, for instance, in the Danube Delta, but also on how intensive agriculture changed the landscape in the grain-growing regions of the lower Danube. So all in all, these three would be the main topics I've been researching for almost 20 years now.
That sounds very interesting, but I'm curious, when you started as a young PhD, did it ever cross your mind that your research would be so relevant today? Or let's say, looking at your broad spectrum of topics that you study for the 19th and 20th century, which do you think that are particularly relevant today?
There are, unfortunately, too many of them are still relevant. When I started my PhD, it was in 2003, and I was working with Paul Cernovodeanu, who was a Romanian researcher interested in the Black Sea region and interested in British involvement in the Black Sea trade in the modern period. And also I used to work with Șerban Papacostea, who had a larger chronological view of the Black Sea history. So when I started working on my PhD, of course, it was a period in which the Black Sea trade started to be important once again, after the reopening of the Black Sea to capitalist exchanges, after the fall of communism. But it was still a very peaceful period of history. A bit later, in 2008, with Russia's war against Georgia, things started to be hot again. And then in 2014, the annexation of Crimea, and more recently the war in Ukraine, these events showed that some of the topics I've been working on, such as the importance of the Black Sea region, the geopolitics of the Black Sea region, the grain trade in the Black Sea region, and topics related to energy supply in the Black Sea region, they are very relevant all the way to now. So we can say that there's a historical continuum all the way from the pre-modern times, if not before, because if we look at the ancient period, there was also a very lucrative grain trade between all these ancient Greek colonies and the Mediterranean world. So the Black Sea region has always been a very important breadbasket of the Western world and also of Mediterranean Europe.
So it seems like war and trade are, two continuities. And unfortunately, I have to ask from today's perspective, you travel often in this region. And so how do you think that the region itself changed, the Lower Danube and the Black Sea, in the last couple of years? Or maybe specifically, how did this region change since February 22 and the outbreak of war in the region?
It changed a lot, but it started to change before 2022. And it changed in several phases. The first significant change was in 2008, as I was saying. This was the end of a sort of a peaceful stage in the Black Sea history. Because after 2008, there's a growing interest of riparian countries to invest in like solidifying their defense. Already in 2008, Romania and Bulgaria were NATO members. They were looking closer towards regional developments. Romania especially was really interested in a way in becoming a sort of pillar of regional stability, but this was still not sufficient. And then the events in Ukraine in 2014, they also changed the geopolitical perspective, and eventually 2 years ago, the full-fledged war, like regional powers and riparian countries thought about finding better ways of showing Russia that they are interested in their own defense. So if I can say how the region changed, it changed in many ways. It changed economically a lot in the last decades. Romania and Bulgaria are also EU member states. Since 2007, both countries are in a continuous economic development in the last 15 years. They have increased cooperation also across the Black Sea to the Caucasus region. Georgia is, of course, one of the main partners. And in recent years, both countries on NATO's eastern and southeastern flank, they have much better connections to Ukraine. And they both have been very supportive of Ukraine.
So you mentioned several aspects here, so let's just dwell a bit on this. And you mentioned defense and militarization. You mentioned trade and regional economic cooperations, and you stayed somehow on the level of the nation. I mean, for sure, you mentioned the European Union or NATO as an alliance, but if we would break down this evolution or these changes at a much lower scale and look and combine this with your interest in ports, when we would look at one of these hubs in the Black Sea, the port of Constanța, how does this change, break down and look at this, let's say, grassroots level, though I doubt there is much grass left there?
Okay, Constanța is a very interesting case study because Constanța is Romania's largest port. Since 2007, Constanța has tried to rebrand itself as this sort of regional hub, but it has only recently started to grow in connection to the events of Ukraine. And of course, if we look at the Black Sea ports, Odessa used to be the largest grain exporter. And since 2022, with the grain exports of Ukraine through its southern ports, Constanța took advantage of the situation and in a way reshaped the grain trade of the region. Constanța is an interesting example, also because it's Romania's greatest port. It's well connected to the Romanian mainland and through it to at least some neighboring countries. But Constanța has a special connection to Bucharest. So the infrastructure going from Bucharest and from Romania to Constanța is quite good. There's a highway, there's also a fast train connection. Constanța is also linked to the Danube through the Danube-Black Sea Canal. So there are several ways of getting goods to Constanța, and in recent years, investments in the harbor infrastructure have also been quite large. So Constanța is ready to take over a large portion of the Romanian and also Ukrainian exports. Since the start of the full-fledged war, Constanța has grown really fast. For instance, only in the last year, in 2023, it grew by almost 25% compared to the previous year. It has had a record year, almost 93 million of metric tons exported. And what's important is that more than a third of the exports are grain. And from these grain exports, about 13 million of Ukrainian grain exports. This is a lot if we look at the overall Ukrainian exports during these times of war. So more than half of Ukraine's grain exports were were shipped through Constanța. And they got to Constanța through several different channels. And a very important channel is the Danube itself, which, as I was saying, is linked to Constanța through the Danube-Black Sea Canal. The canal is 40 this year. It was completed in 1984. At the time, its economic importance was not clear. It was regarded as this sort of socialist, Stalinist, and then it was taken over by Nicolae Ceausescu and completed in 1984 as this sort of personal ambition of linking the Danube to the Black Sea. But now we fully see the canal working, and this has turned Constanța into the largest port on the Danube. Economically, the Danube does not end in Sulina. We always hear in Germany also the Danube flows into the Black Sea at Sulina. It's true from a geographical perspective, but economically the Danube ends at Constanța. So Constanța has been a really important hub that secured huge Ukrainian grain exports, and in the context of the current war, Romania has been a solid partner for Ukraine's resistance, economic resistance, also military resistance, and Constanța has supported the export of the grain trade of its main rival, which used to be Odessa. So it's a very interesting development. We have to see what will change at the end of the war, but for the past 2 years, Constanța has really developed a lot.
So if we look back at like 2,000 years of infrastructural development on the lower Danube and in Constanța, it looks more or less like it paid off, at least economically, maybe even from a military point of view or strategically. But I also wanted to ask about the environmental costs of all these works, because just a few years before that, when people thought about the confluence of the Danube to the Black Sea, they were thinking about the Danube Delta as this Ramsar site of conservation, but also they mostly associated Constanța with its beaches and its tourism. So how does this, high level or high end development of infrastructure and all these investments have costs and impacts of human communities, but also on the environment itself?
It has most probably it has a very high cost for the environment, at least, because there are several projects aiming to further improve the navigability of the Danube. One such project is called Fast Danube 2, which aims to increase the navigability of the shared Romanian-Bulgarian portion of the Danube, so a very long part of the lower Danube. Currently, the river is navigable for about 280 days a year, and the intention is to make it navigable for 340 days a year. So most of the year, excluding a month, let's say. And also in the Danube Delta region, there's a different project which was implemented last year called Primus, which aimed to increase the traffic on the Sulina Canal, which before the war in Ukraine was usually used only during the day, so for an average of 8 hours during the winter and up to 12 hours during the summertime. And now, for starting with the last year, the Sulina Canal is navigable for 24 hours a day. So this has led to a huge increase in shipping along the Sulina Canal. For instance, before there were 2,000 ships going along the Sulina Canal in 2021, and last year this number increased to 4,500 ships, so more than double. So it's a huge increase. Of course, this comes with an environmental cost. That we know about this dispute between Romania and Ukraine, the so-called Bystroe issue, the Bystroe question. This was important in the late 2000s when Romania protested against Ukraine's attempts to have a deep sea canal linking the Ukrainian Danube ports to the Black Sea. But what we see now, it's in a way exactly the same situation. So in times of military conflict, most probably the environment is no longer a priority. What the Romanian side, I think, hopes is that with Ukraine coming closer to the European Union, Ukraine will also follow European regulations, meaning also an increased protection for the environment. As for the local communities, if we look at Sulina, for instance, or Tulcea or Galați and so on, of course the increased shipping means more like business opportunities and so on, and people are happy with such opportunities. But at the same time, the war in Ukraine does not encourage too many tourists to go to the Romanian Danube Delta. So there are advantages, definitely, but there are also several drawbacks of the current situation. So I wouldn't say that the people in the Danube Delta, for instance, are doing better than they used to do like 2 years ago.
So we zoomed for a while into this hub, Constanța, and all the networks that developed and starts there. But if we zoom out and look at a larger region around the Danube Delta and the Black Sea, the so-called Dobroja region, how would all these changes, all this infrastructure building, economic ties, geopolitical realignment, reflects there, or how is this something that changed maybe the region?
The region has always been this sort of inter-imperial borderland. Borders changed in the Danube Delta region a lot in the past 2 centuries, for instance. They changed after every war in the East. They changed in 1829, in 1856, 1878, then in 1918, then in 1940, and then so on. So there are many changes. And the region is still very important geopolitically. Romania, as I was saying, joined NATO in 2004, but even before this, as a NATO ally, Constanța was a very important hub for NATO during the war in Iraq, for instance, and in Afghanistan. Constanța was an important air base linking Western Europe to the Middle East. And then after 2004, with Romania joining NATO, Constanța, and especially the airport near Constanța in Mihail Cogălnicianu, this has become a really important NATO stronghold. In recent years, after 2022, investments in Constanța have increased quite considerably, also in military terms, and the NATO base in Mihail Cogălnicianu is supposed to become the largest NATO base in Europe, larger than the Ramstein base. It's currently being reconfigured. It will host about 10,000 NATO soldiers. It's a small city in itself with schools and kindergartens and blocks of flats and so on. And it's very well positioned to show NATO's resolve on the Eastern Front. In the Black Sea region, Constanța is about 400 kilometers away from Crimea. Constanța is also very close to the Romanian and NATO's borders to Ukraine. So it's really close to the front lines. In the past months, we have seen moments when port cities, Ukrainian port cities in the Danube Delta were bombed by the Russians. And the important message for the Romanians and also for NATO allies was that NATO is close to the front lines. Also, Constanța is a very large maritime base. The Romanian Navy is based in Constanța. It's a navy that is not as strong as we would like it to be, but it's this is also related to the way in which the Black Sea functions as a closed sea, regulated by the Montreux Convention of 1936, meaning that allied warships or any warship can only enter the Black Sea and remain in the Black Sea for 21 days, so 3 weeks. So that leaves the Black Sea as a closed sea in which European countries have to confront each other. With Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey as NATO member states, with Russia on the other hand as the hegemon of the Black Sea, things are, of course, very challenging, and there are attempts now to increase also the military, the maritime base in Constanța. So Constanța is really important also as a military hub. It's close to the front lines, and in the past 2 years, the Allied resolve to support Romania and the alliance has been visibly increasing. Also, this year is an important one because Romania and Bulgaria joined NATO in 2004. So we celebrate 20 years since the expansion of NATO towards Eastern Europe, and it's a security umbrella that is really important for the Romanians.
So if I'm allowed to sum up a little bit, so looking at infrastructure, both military and civil infrastructure is a pertinent way to look at the networks, connections are laid out in a certain region and how these networks change after a conflict or during a conflict. And what I found quite interesting at the beginning of our conversation is that you mentioned also energy and energy connections, and quite often in the press but also in the public conversations there's been talk about the hybrid war with Russia, that of course war happens on a war field with real victims and destruction, but also it happens on the internet, and it happens also in various links and the provision of services. So how does energy provision in this region changed, or hopefully will change even more in the future?
We've seen at the beginning of the war the importance of energy infrastructure in relation to the war. And we remember the case of Nord Stream, for instance, and the role it played as a weapon, let's say, or as a way of preventing war. And in Southeast Europe, energy has been a very important issue. Also historically, in Ceausescu's times, communist Romania wanted to be energy independent. This was one of Ceausescu's intentions of, in a way, also establishing connections to the Western world. And in recent years, the energy conflict has been playing in the background of military conflict, and we've seen this also in relation to Ukraine. We've seen all these discussions about the importance of the gas pipelines linking Russia to Europe and so on. We've seen the role of Gazprom in the conflict as the main source of income for the Russian budget and so on. So it has also been very important in relation to local countries in Southeast Europe. Some of them, as it's the case with Romania, are in a better position. Romania is almost energy independent. Romania has enough resources, but the problem was more related to exploiting those resources than to the availability of resources. Since the conflict started, and even since the annexation of the Crimea in 2014, one of the ways of linking states closer together, EU member states, but not only, has also been through energy corridors. For instance, Moldova, the small state of Moldova, has been a very difficult situation because Moldova was linked to Russian energy via Transnistria. This state, this de facto state controlled by Russia, and which controlled the flows of energy to Moldova. So it was crucial in order to provide Moldova with options of supplying Moldova with energy. A pipeline, a gas pipeline, was built with European funding between Romania and Moldova from Iași to Ungheni and further towards Chișinău, so as to at least have some alternative in case the energy dispute between Russia and Moldova worsened. And this was the case in the last years. Also, since the war started, since the full-fledged war started in Ukraine, Romania has also has been supporting Ukraine with energy. Electricity has been sent from Romania towards Ukraine, even in the last few days, as Russia keeps attacking energy infrastructure in Ukraine. Romania has supported Ukraine with electricity. In fact, the two countries, and Moldova also, they are better and better linked, also in terms of the energy infrastructure, and this has proved the importance of relying on multiple energy supply routes. This is a very important issue also for the European Union. In the past 2 years, Europe has looked for alternatives to Russian gas and energy. Some of them are available, but some more infrastructure is needed also to interconnect different countries. There are several projects also in the Black Sea. The Black Sea is also a very important area in relation to energy corridors, but also gas reserves. I will speak in a couple of days about the Snake Island, and it's a topic that is important also in relation to the gas reserves in the continental shelf of the Black Sea. There are such reserves being now exploited by Turkey. Of course, Russia is doing it a lot, and Romania also aims to develop these resources. It's a section called Neptune Deep. It's about 160 kilometers from the from Constanța into the Black Sea. It's in Romania's exclusive economic zone, and it's a very rich deposit of gas. And there are now projects by the Austrian company OMV, which also has a subsidiary in Romania, Petrom, and with the Romanian state, there are projects that aim to bring the gas to Romania and to the region. So this will definitely make the region more energy independent and thus also safer from a military and political perspective.
You mentioned the Republic of Moldova and also Transnistria, and knowing that this year is several important elections besides the elections for the European Union will happen in Romania on the national and local level, and looking at the current press releases, I don't think there is one day that Gagauzia and the conflict there around Transnistria and the Republic of Moldova is not making, the first page of the newspapers. So can you tell us a little bit more about the current conflict there and how it also changed and even intensified within the last few weeks?
Okay, this is also is also a historical issue, because the Danube Delta region is this sort of inter-imperial borderland. The region has been colonized by both the Russian and the Ottoman empires, and in what's now southern Ukraine and southern Moldova and Dobroja, we see all these different ethnic and religious communities. The Gagauz and the Bulgarian colonists were brought to southern Ukraine and southern Moldova by the Russian Empire in early 19th century, when they were trying to fortify, strengthen the border against the Ottoman Empire. On the Romanian side, we see also different sort of communities from all these Russian-speaking sects like the Lipovans, Molokans, and so on, that escaped from the Russian Empire towards the safer Ottoman Empire. So this is ethnically and religiously a very diverse region. And Russia is using all these populations in order to play a more important role in the conflict. We all know about Transnistria. Transnistria has been an issue for 3 decades. The Transnistrian issue is still open, and there's no solution to it. But in recent months, the Gagauz issue has been opened once again. The Gagauz people, they are a very interesting nation, a Turkish nation with Christian religion. They have been in the past 2 centuries. They have been close to Russia, and they regard Russia as the imperial power that will protect their interests. Following the Transnistrian War in the early 1990s, Gagauzia has a special constitutional status within Moldova. It's an autonomous region of Moldova. It has its own sort of government and so on. And in the past couple of years, Gagauzia has been involved into very important political plays. For instance, you know that in 2023, a political party in Moldova, the party of Ilan Shor, was considered illegal due to its use of money in order to bribe voters and so on. And since last year, Gagauzia has a new Bashkan. The Bashkan is the leader of the Gagauz Republic. And this Bashkan, Evgenia Guțul, it's her name, a very young woman. She has been more and more active in trying to show that the Gagauz people, they do not support Moldova's attempts to go closer towards the European Union. In October, Moldova has presidential elections, and it's a very difficult test for Maia Sandu. She has been president for the past 40 years, and at the same time, Moldova will have a referendum with a simple question: if the population of Moldova wants to go closer towards the European Union. So there's now a front of all the anti-European parties in Moldova, and Gagauzia is playing also a major role in saying that the country wants closer ties to Russia rather than the European Union. In recent weeks, Evgenia Guțul, she was involved, she visited Russia several times. She met Putin in Sochi first, and then she went twice to Moscow, and she is insisting for closer economic ties to Russia, which are not regarded very well from the capital, from Chisinau. So the political landscape is complicated by the situation in Gagauzia, and there are daily attempts of fueling the conflict that is not burning, at least yet.
So while listening to your talk, and especially about this very deep local ramifications, but also about the regional implication, I was still, somehow puzzled that just because we are here in Regensburg and in Germany having this conversation, that Germany is actually missing. So I was wondering if that's the case because it is a global conflict and that these issues, are handled at the level of NATO and at the level of the European Union, but also that maybe we somehow are in an era where the nation state in this context is not that important anymore. On the other hand, you talked a lot about, Romania as a nation state and the gains and the changes happening there. So how would you, reflect on the way Germany plays a role in this, in the direct relationships to the area?
Germany is an important economic partner in Romania and Southeast Europe. Germany is very important in terms of industry investments. Militarily, it has not been very present. Perhaps it's been more present in the Baltic region rather than the Black Sea region. So it might also have to do with different initiatives in NATO and the European Union. But for Romania, the main security umbrella has been the US, of course. And in the last year or so, France has played a more important role, at least in some parts of Romania. In Transylvania, for instance, there's a major French military base, which will be increased next year. So France is very present militarily. But I would say that Germany is very important in connection to deliveries of weapons. I don't think we should look too much at soldiers or military personnel or officers and so on. But hopefully Germany is as a very important industrial country plays a more visible role in connection to providing the means for defense. I've been speaking a lot about nation states, it's true, but the conflict has shown that nation states are still very important, at least in relation to defense strategies. Everything is still, let's say, designed at the level of states. If we look at all the major infrastructure we've been speaking about, all economic infrastructure, but also military ones, such infrastructure has been built by states with European funds, and there are now many discussions. Last week there was such a discussion in Constanța about regionalization in Romania, because what's interesting to say is that Eastern Romania, the Moldova, the part of Romania, that's the poorest part of the country. So all these investments in infrastructure, they have been very well received by the population. There are even now, if you read English tabloids, for instance, the highway going from northern Moldova all the way to Bucharest is linked to the war in Ukraine rather than with the needs of the Romanian economy. So the nation state, it's still very, very important, and we feel this. Those of us who are from Eastern Romania, we see the differences in development between Western Romania, Transylvania, Banat, so on, Bucharest in southern Romania, and Moldova. But the solution still comes from the center. It's not easy to see such like huge infrastructure projects built with money from regional counties and so on. So states are still very relevant, and everything from planning to like construction is coordinated at the national level.
This is maybe something difficult to ask of you because you dwell so much in the past, but also look very closely at the present. But would you dare to make a prediction for the future?
It's complicated. So many elections in Europe this year. Many elections in Romania, in Moldova, elections in the US this autumn. So it's difficult to predict, but what I can predict is that this militarization will continue, that the investments in military infrastructure, in weapons, training soldiers and so on, this will remain a large portion of public spending. It will increase over the next years. This comes with opportunities, of course, for the military industry and so on. This also comes with many problems. There are several economic sectors that lose money in research, education, culture. They lose money in this way. So it's not a very happy situation, but it's clear that Europe needs some sort of defense strategy, because Europe was living through a very optimistic period, and the war seemed to be very far away behind us. And recent developments in the Black Sea region have shown to us that it's not that far behind us. Ukraine lives now through a war, and it's important to be prepared. The prosperity and let's say happiness of Europeans also depend on being able to defend these values. So I would say that this will continue, the militarization, and hopefully now that the American Congress just voted this financial support for Ukraine, hopefully Ukraine will be able to defend itself, because in the past years Ukraine has also been the main provider of defense for Europe. So it's important to support Ukraine as long as Ukraine is willing to fight, and I'm hopeful that Europe, if it stands united, will be able to diminish the security risks coming from Russia.
Konstantin, thank you very much for this conversation and good luck with your future work.
Thank you, Luma. And just to finish, I will say that on Wednesday I will speak about, also related to our discussion about the Snake Island, which is a small island in the Black Sea and which is relevant for current developments in the region. Thanks once again for inviting me.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check the episode description. You'll always find our latest podcast recommendation there. See you next time.